Give it a couple seconds and then we can start.
If you hear my children, I'm sorry.
Okay, we can get started. How's everybody doing tonight? Welcome to People Power Hour. Tonight we have a special guest, Allison Heimes, candidate for state legislature in District 39. How you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing great. Good to have you on. How's
Thank
your
you.
day been?
Very busy. I don't know that you can work a full-time job and run for office and have children.
Right, yeah, definitely. Before we get too deep into our conversation, could you let the viewers know who you are, what you're running for, and what you're running for?
Yeah, so my name's Allison Heimes. I am the candidate for state legislature out of District 39. That encompasses Elkhorn, Waterloo, Valley, parts of Millard, parts of Omaha, a little town called Venice. Yeah.
Okay. What made you decide to run?
So I decided to run for office for kind of a sad reason. My brother passed away 2.5, almost 3 years ago now, from suicide. And when he passed, he was in the National Guard, and I was unaware at the time that those who are in the National Guard aren't entitled to burial plaques recognizing their service unless they deployed at the order of the president. So any National Guard service member who's deployed because they were helping with COVID or a riot or floods or any other natural disaster aren't entitled to that burial plaque for that service. So I wrote a bill that would change that, and I tried to get our current representative to listen to it, and she just wouldn't hear me out.
Wow, that's very surprising, and that's also sad. Wow, that's wow. And I know I brought you on and told everybody we're going to be talking about mental health. I've been talking about mental health a lot during my run and during this campaign because, like, it's so taboo in my community to speak about mental health. Individuals going to see a therapist and things like that. But I also believe that it's important that we make it less taboo because so many people are dealing with mental health issues or some type of traumatic issues, and it never gets checked, and then bad situations happen because of it. So I definitely commend you for running, especially for your brother because I don't think a lot of times I think a lot of times when you say you're running and you got these campaigns, a lot of people don't see you as a person. They see you as just a politician. And I think that the more we can make ourselves regular people, as much as I try to tell people that no, I'm not on this pedestal. I'm Terrell. I'm a regular person. I'm from the community. The better off we'll be because if we humanize ourselves and we humanize politics, humanize politicians, I think engagement could be a lot better.
I totally agree. Completely agree. It's weird having people think that you're some sort of career politician when for me, and I think for you too, it's like the first time that I've ever jumped into the political arena.
Right.
So they automatically assume you're some sort of dishonest, snake oil salesman or something, and you're really not.
Yes. How's your race been so far?
Well, like you, it's been a real roller coaster with COVID changing the game almost completely. I kind of relied on people who had run in the past to tell me, what's the typical life of a candidate like? What are you supposed to do to get voter attention? And it was, knock on doors and host fundraising parties and, go to all kinds of events, tailgates, whatever you can get yourself to meet voters. And it seems that all of that has been canceled. So we've had to get sort of creative.
Yeah, it's been like initially I was like, what am I gonna do? Because I had this big plan to be out canvassing and hitting doors, and then it's like you can't hit doors. Start doing digital stuff, and it's like for me, I don't know. I think you get a better feel seeing people in person to person. Like I'm not a phone call. I really don't like using the phone. I'd rather talk to you in person. So it's been an adjustment for me. How's it been for you?
Um, it's been sort of draining actually spending all of my time online, which sort of feeds into this mental health conversation that we're having. When you move everything online, it takes that person to person interaction away. It makes everything sort of seem superficial, and people are much more critical online. And that constant stream of bad news that comes from, CNN or Fox News or even the local news channels can be very draining. So switching to strictly online has been hard.
I understand because it was initially it was tough on me just going from being outside more and moving around more to work and do stuff to primarily just sit inside of just one space for a long time. And it's just like this is not motivating at all. It's like hard. So I definitely believe that it's not just me and you, and there's many more people in our communities that are feeling the same way, which is why mental health is very important because if we aren't getting out and we're not doing the things we used to do, it can be depressing for some people.
I've actually recommended to a lot of people that they should maybe take a break from social media or constant 24-hour news cycles for a while. You know, get some one-on-one perspective and go out and spend some time outside, do some social distancing activities if you can. But yeah, that constant online presence, I don't think is healthy.
Definitely not. I tried to take a break from it, sit my phone down, and just disappear for a little bit. As hard as it is being a candidate, that you kind of have to have your phone next to you now. But I try
Does
as
your
much.
phone tell you how much time you spent online too? Because mine does, and I always like
Yeah,
cringe at the number.
oh my, wow, like I have no, I need to fix my life.
Yes. Yeah. When I'm
um,
done campaigning, I don't know that it necessarily matters what the outcome is. I'm definitely going to take a break from
right.
social media for a while.
I want to get lost on an island for 2 weeks just to de-
I hate camping, like loathe camping because I'm not a bug person. Um, yeah. But I actually recommended to my husband that we go camping over Labor Day weekend just to get away.
Nice. When you speak of mental health from a state perspective and from a legislative perspective, what are some things that you think that our state should be focused on as far as mental health?
So first, I'll say that there seems to be a consensus among almost all legislators and all the doors I knock on that mental health needs reform and that it's an important institution to reform. But even with that consensus, nothing meaningful has happened for quite some time in that arena. And so I think, and on one of my platforms is bringing professional mental health counselors to the public school system
Hmm.
and the private school system if they welcome it, because I don't want to leave any child behind. But definitely the public school system, to help catch some of those signs early on before those kids get pushed out into the world alone.
I definitely agree with that. I've spoken to it a few times about the kids that are a lot of the kids that are getting suspended and pushed out of school into the school to prison pipeline are being labeled as bad or they have some type of issue. I'm like, who took the time out their day to just sit those kids down and ask them what's going on, how can I help? You know what I mean? Just trying to do whatever they can to keep the kid inside the school, but also figure out what's going on because some kids might have went to sleep without food last night. They might have saw something bad happened in their household, and then they're coming to school, and maybe they're acting out, but it's not because they just want to be disruptive to the class environment. It's because they actually are seeking help, but instead of getting the help, a lot of times they're just pushed back into the same environments that caused the hurt and the trauma in the first place.
And some teachers will go above and beyond and do that, sit them down and ask them what's going on. But we really can't expect teachers to be everything for students, especially for what we pay them. So it's important, I think, to bring in professionals to help talk to those students.
Because when I brung, like, when I said this, like it was months ago, but I was like, maybe we should just have some more mental health based trauma trained therapists in our schools, and then we're like, oh, they shouldn't be in schools. But I'll just say, like, it's 2020. Yeah, I mean, we're not in the 90s, we're not in the early 2000s. We have to be creative and do whatever we can as a state and as a community to address the needs of our kids. I think we can't just say because mental health therapists haven't been in schools prior that it shouldn't happen. Because I agree, I think the teachers should be teaching. This should not be a part of their job description. They should be able to teach the classes, and if a kid needs help, the kid should be able to access that help in the school if needed.
I completely agree. So I think it's gonna take a large effort to get that there, because, like you said, there are pushback from legislators about providing any kind of service that's not just reading, math, you know, or science. You know, those are the categories that some people think is the only categories the the school system should touch. But we know that they're responsible for so much more. And this pandemic, I think, has shined quite the light on that issue, especially when it came to feeding vulnerable populations. You know, oh, if kids are going to have to stay home and learn from home, how do we know that they're going to get those 2 meals that they would have got at the public school, you know, for free or reduced? And it's sort of an acknowledgement that schools provide a lot more than just learning when we say things like that.
Definitely, because another thing that's kind of hits it, I think it kind of intersects is mental health and in the criminal justice system or the juvenile justice system, because there are some students in our schools that are dealing with things and they act out, but when they go to school, they either get put out and then they kind of turned off by the school environment and just don't show up. If they don't show up, they're truant, and then they end up in the juvenile justice system, and you just start a whole process, which is why we should be addressing this issue head on to prevent those type of situations.
I mean, we're playing the long game here too, right? We're trying to invest in students early on so that when they become adults, they're functional, healthy adults.
Right.
But if we want a more immediate solution to some of these mental health problems, what you've been talking about, the school to prison pipeline, I think we can help some of the people that are already there with reform in the prison and the criminal justice system.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, a large percentage of the people that are in prison or in the jails have mental health issues. Yeah. And that's why they're there. And that's wrong. They need help and they're not going to get it in jail. So I'd like to see, we have a veterans court now. We have a drug court. I'd like to see a mental health court implemented in each county so that people can explain, you know, I have these issues, but I don't have insurance that covers the medication to get help here. And so yes, I might have stole something, or I might have acted in anger towards somebody, and now I have an assault charge. But really, it's because I was having a manic episode or something like that. And the real solution then is to make sure that they can get access to medication and get on a plan to address that illness rather than put them in jail for a year.
When you speak of access to medication, do you see that as I know it's a barrier. How do you, I guess, how do you see that issue being tackled, if it can be tackled in the legislature?
That's a really tough question, because a lot of a lot of the solutions surrounding health insurance and healthcare in general are national issues. But Medicaid expansion was a big solution that we were offering, and I think we still haven't implemented it. Wasn't it due to be implemented in October?
Yeah, I think it's supposed to be implemented fully October 1, hopefully, but it passed on a ballot 2 years ago.
Yeah, there's people who've been struggling for 2 years.
Right.
That could have been helped. But I'd be for expanding it even further, as far as we need to go to make sure that people are covered and have access to medication.
I agree. When you speak to the issue with your brother and veterans, and I know a lot of veterans deal with mental health and trauma from just being on tours and being a part of the military. What do you think we could do as a state to be better at taking care of our veterans? Because I see a lot of times when you drive around, you see a lot of veterans on the streets, and a part of me is like, they fought for our country. Why can't we do more to make sure that somebody that fought for this country don't end up with a sign on the streets? I know people say like, oh, they should get a job and all this stuff, but if they're dealing with mental health issues, it's kind of hard to get a job or keep a job.
I agree. So I've heard some pretty good ideas in this arena, but one that has stuck with me is sort of a peer-to-peer program. Sometimes veterans don't feel like seeking regular therapy is going to be helpful to them because they've experienced something that your average person can't understand.
Mhm.
So setting them up with like a buddy system, setting them up with somebody who's served, who understands what it's like to serve, maybe even someone who also struggles with similar mental health issues, and having them be there for each other, I think would be a valued system. Now, it could be implemented in various, there's like, VA centers all over the place, or you can do it at the hospital, but there's a lot of active veterans in the area or National Guard service members in the area that they could tap into. It's hard here too because there's also a preemption in this area with veterans. It's sort of a national issue. Federal governments like to handle that kind of stuff, but I do think that there could be great strides made in the legislature to tackle this as well.
Right. I know they had the Nebraska Promise for students that are from our state, for them to be able to get free tuition to our schools. I think there should also be a Nebraska Promise to our veterans to ensure that they're taken care of long term.
I agree. That's a great idea.
Yeah. What campaigning as far as mental health in your community?
Sorry, you froze there for a minute, so I didn't catch the question.
Sorry. Have you been hearing a lot of concerns about mental health in your community while campaigning on the phones and things like that?
So I found before COVID hit and I had been canvassing, I found that people don't really bring up mental health unless you do. But if you do, almost everybody has a story. Somebody that they know, either friend or family, who has struggled with some sort of mental health issue. So I really do believe we have the majority of the support from constituents and Nebraskans in general to tackle this issue.
Do you think I think so. Like, create more access, and do you think our state should reopen some type of mental health hospital, those type of institutions again? Because right now the prison is the biggest mental health, servicer right now, and it's not doing its job. It's not designed to either.
It wasn't designed to. Yeah. So I guess they're doing their job. But, so we do have the Douglas County Mental Health Center, but what I've been hearing is that there's entire floors empty because they just don't have the funding to operate. So if we give them actual funding, we might see that people do get the help that they need. Now, there's some debate on whether or not we should open holding centers for people that are struggling. You know, how long can we hold somebody? And, you know, there's constitutional issues with that. And I really do want most of it to be voluntary. But I think people would be warm to it if the alternative is jail.
Right. Sorry, I'm frozen for some reason. I apologize.
I can still hear you. Your image is just
Oh,
frozen.
all right. Yeah, I agree. I think, especially when you speak of like alternatives, I think we should do whatever we can as a state to not just lessen the prison population, but to make sure that even though somebody ended up in a situation that may lead to them going to jail or prison, that we evaluate the whole person to see maybe this person doesn't need to go to prison. Maybe this person just needs to go see a mental health therapist to get a better handle on what's going on in their lives.
Right. And it's a delicate because there are HIPAA requirements for mental health professionals too. And so if we did a probationary period where somebody just sought the help that they needed and we couldn't really ask for details to follow up on how that's going for them, we'd have to be careful with that. But I'm sure that there's a way.
I agree. Have you seen any like creative things going on across the country that you think we could bring to Nebraska?
Oh, you know, I read a book called Tightrope, and it talked about, it really pointed out the similarities between rural areas and urban areas and the types of issues with mental health, healthcare access, and drug abuse and alcohol abuse that happen in both urban and rural areas, and maybe the reasons why some people in urban areas don't seek help or can't seek help. You know, and there's quite a lot of similarities actually. Um, that access to healthcare is a big one. Um, in in other communities, and I've even heard about this happening in Nebraska too. They have like a traveling clinic, you know, that can come out, or they use telehealth more so that people can speak to somebody. And I think we could utilize those things more. There's more in the book. I wish I could remember right now. I should have written it down, but they had a lot of great.
Tightrope, right?
Yeah, Tightrope. I think I already gave it back to the person that lent it to me, but but Tightrope. I tweeted about it, so if you search through my Twitter account, it should be there somewhere.
Okay, cool. I'm gonna have to check it out. Uh, what are some other things that you're looking to address in the legislature once you get elected?
So I've made my platform families first, which is, there's so many issues that affect families, but the ones that I was trying to address more specifically were like parental leave policies for when people adopt or have babies. I can tell you that personally, I was told that I might get fired after I had my second child, and that was a big motivator for me to find a new employer. But I mean, it was kind of scary at the time, and so I was looking for other people to have to go through that. And I had to use all my vacation time, which isn't a big deal. I mean, it's sort of expected, but then I had to pull out of my retirement account to manage that time. 6 weeks being without a job is difficult for anybody. So that's been one of my platforms. Besides mental health, I mean, your basic principles of governing, budgeting, right? Balancing a budget, making sure you have a surplus. My constituents talk a lot about property taxes. I have quite a bit of rural area in my district, and farmers have a big problem with property taxes disproportionately affecting them. But I also have one of the wealthiest districts in Nebraska, and so we've got some pretty big property owners here too who talk about their property taxes. But I can say that even my property taxes went up by $3,000, and that's nothing to mock, So I know that that's a big issue that people want to solve, but if anybody pays attention to what Justin Wayne posts, and I feel like he's the only one who says this, is that the state of Nebraska doesn't actually collect property taxes. The school districts do. So for us to then give tax breaks we're giving out more money than we even take in as a state. And there's something sort of inherently wrong with that. And anytime we mention bringing in new sources of revenue, like marijuana, we have a governor who immediately pays for and puts out ads against it.
Which makes no sense to me. It's like our state is always complaining about resources and not having enough money to do this or do that, but we're not open-minded enough to look at other revenue streams to bring into our state. And then, like, when you bring up cannabis, they try to make it like you're advocating for people to smoke. No, I'm not advocating for people to smoke, but alcohol thing, and I don't, you know what I mean? We allow the sale of alcohol in our state and in our country, which some may argue is worse than cannabis and marijuana smoking.
Well, yeah, is the argument a moral high ground argument, or is it a healthcare argument? Because what I'm hearing is that there aren't really a lot of long-term health effects from the use of marijuana. I know that it still needs to be studied, but their hands are tied with even studying it because it's illegal. So legalizing it is actually the first step to studying it and know what the long-term health effects are.
Right. And then what mind boggles me is the fact that it's being traded on the stock market, and there's thousands of individuals that are sitting in prison for decades because they got busted selling it or some type of conspiracy, but it could be traded on the stock market right now.
How messed up is that? Yeah, I don't even have words for that.
It makes no sense. Like, okay, I'm sitting in jail, but people are really profiting off of something that I got 30 years for.
Well, and it still largely affects immigration too. If any, I have to really warn my minor children immigrant clients, because I'm an immigration attorney. I'll throw that out there for anybody who doesn't know. Those kids will sometimes, smoke a joint or something, and their American citizen friends aren't at risk of really anything but an infraction, a ticket. But them, they're looking at deportation for that. And, and that's something really unfair. That they're held to a higher standard just because they were born somewhere else.
Yeah, it's really sad, especially how we dehumanize individuals because they come from other places. Like, this person is still a human, regardless of whether they came here legally or illegally. They're still human. We still should treat all humans with the same respect that you would expect somebody to treat your family member.
Yeah. If there's one thing that I'd say has really been drained of this country, it's empathy. Mm-hmm. Where did the empathy go? I hate talking to somebody and they say, I don't care, or that's not my problem. They're like, well, I'm asking you to think about how someone else might feel or react to an event. And if you think that it's an understandable reaction, maybe we shouldn't punish it so harshly.
And when they say it's not all our problem, it's like, do you not understand that until we make sure that this country and this state is welcoming to all, there will still continue to be protests in the streets. Somebody, those things will still continue unless we do something as a country and as a state to address it. We can't just say they're wrong or they're bad people or they're just speaking out of term or something. These are real issues. People wouldn't gather in mass to protest something if it wasn't an issue.
Can you hold on just 1 second?
Sure. And if you haven't, make sure you visit our website, peopleforterrellmckinney.com. I know my stream today is kind of choppy. I don't know what's going on. Sorry.
Sorry about that. I heard a car alarm going off, and I was worried that my dog set it off by laying on my keys. So,
what kind of dog do you have?
I've got a golden doodle and a schnoodle. They're actually both right here. Here's one of them.
That's so funny. What's
the other one?
I have a golden doodle now. She's 3 months.
Oh my gosh, They're the best dogs. They're so lovable and loyal.
She acts like a big baby.
Oh, yes. Mine's name is Chewy, and he's got to be next to me all the time. So if I'm cooking in the kitchen, he's laying by my feet. If I'm on the couch, he's right next to me. If I'm in the bed, he's right next to me.
Sounds just like my dog Nala. She's like, and she's territorial. Like if somebody's is next to me, she starts growling or getting a little snap.
That's not so bad. At least you know they love you.
Right. So what do you have coming up in the next couple weeks or a few weeks as far as your campaign?
Well, I have some ideas. Nothing that's set in stone right now, but we're thinking about doing maybe a food drive.
Oh.
And then we're probably going to have a tailgate party. And I mean, whether the Huskers are playing or not, we're going to show a Husker game. So we'll figure it out.
Right. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Dang, I forgot my question. Sorry. What are some other concerns you have around mental health in our state that you think should be spoke about more?
Well, I mean, I'm not sure that the legislature can solely tackle this, but just generally, there's a stigma attached with anxiety and depression that I would like to see the community rally around and try to eradicate. I posted a video about it once where I talked about misconceptions surrounding depression and how people will often say things like, just be happy, just go outside more, just exercise, or just eat healthier. And although all of those things are very important and can help alleviate some of the symptoms that are associated with depression, they do not cure depression. And so sometimes people need medication, and sometimes people need to talk to somebody. And so I think as a society, we need to recognize that that's okay. Uh-oh.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Dang, I can't hear you though. I don't.
Oh no! Did your phone die?
No idea what's going on. Give me 2 seconds to refresh. Can you hear me? Allison?
Can you hear me?
Yep. Okay, we're back. Sorry.
Okay. With you being gone, could people hear me or no?
I don't. They might have been able to.
Let's hope so.
What were you saying before we got disconnected? I know you were saying like you were saying that the legislator might not be able to tackle it. But what were you speaking to as far as mental health?
I was saying that the community as a whole needs to sort of rally behind the idea of eradicating the stigma behind things like anxiety and depression. And that I would like to see people understand that people who suffer from depression and anxiety, it's not just a matter of willpower for them. It's not just that they can go outside or eat healthier and then suddenly they're cured. Although doing things like eating healthy and getting exercise can help alleviate symptoms of depression, they do not cure you of depression. And so sometimes it's okay that people go seek out a therapist or a psychologist or seek out medication, because sometimes it's needed. And so I think as a society, we need to get on board with people getting regular mental health checkups along with their physicals.
Why do you think people are so hesitant to open up their minds to see that you can't just tell somebody to suck it up or be strong? You know what I mean? Just kind of not really.
Are you still there?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know what's going on today, but I'm trying to make it work. Sorry.
That's okay. Well, I think your question was, why are people so opposed to opening their mind to the idea that people might need help?
Yes.
And I think the answer to that is that if you haven't experienced it yourself, it's hard for you to think it exists.
Right.
So I think people do think that it's a willpower thing. They're like, well, if I'm ever in a bad mood or sad, I just watch junk TV and eat ice cream and then I feel better. And that's not the case for everyone.
Right. Not a one size fits all thing. What works for you doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for somebody else. And I think we have to, as a society, understand that a lot more because like it'd be tough. It's tough when you drive around and you see members of the community, and you could tell that they need some help. Just how they kind of acting in public and they're walking around, it's like this person. Nobody, you could just tell nobody ever took the time to just sit that person down or just give that person time to express themselves. And then you see them on the streets or on a bus stop, and it's like, wow, like what are we like? How can we say we're the greatest country in the world or we're living a good life when we have members of our communities that are struggling, but no one is necessarily helping them, and it kind of just been thrown to the wayside.
I think there's a great deal that we can learn from other cultures, other countries as well, because sometimes I feel like Americans can sort of be distant and not quite as supportive in group roles, in group communities. And that could be like the way our neighborhoods are set up or spread out. But other cultures can really rally around one another and really support one another in a way that I just haven't seen here. And so it might be worth learning from them and trying to implement that kind of a thing.
I think the gift in COVID is that it slowed our society down, and I think it's made people really rethink the way we were living life pre-COVID and how we were treating people, and how we were just addressing our own issues and our own, like, because nobody's perfect and everybody deals with something. I think the gift in it that I believe it forced us all to reevaluate ourselves and our lives to see how can we improve ourselves and improve our situations and assist our family more. because it's not going to be the same whenever this passes, if it ever passes. Right.
It does, but I think I agree. I mean, especially in the early part of the virus hitting back in March, I saw a lot of people rally around to help their immunocompromised neighbors or friends. I know that I dropped off wipes and sanitizer for some neighbors who said they couldn't leave the house. And they're a little elderly, so they might not be able to figure out how to deliver groceries to their house either. So I just, dropped them off if I could. And I saw, like, there's that Nextdoor app. A lot of people would get on that app and say things like, I volunteer as a helper for anybody who needs anything. And then you'd see like 50 comments of people being like, yeah, me too, if anybody needs anything. And grandmas who usually quilt are now making masks and donating them by the hundreds. People really, I think, tried to help.
That's good. I think if anything, it's brought a sense of community back to our neighborhoods and our communities. I think pre-COVID, we are kind of stuck in our own lives and doing what we're doing. You don't necessarily think about, hey, what if this person down the street from me needs help? Who's, you know what I mean? You never think about it, but then you end up in this situation, and it's something you have to think about.
Yeah, it's easy to forget about your neighbors when you're just driving to and from work, keeping your head down, trying to get through your own stuff.
Right.
But when you're working from home and like your greatest source of entertainment is looking out your window, like yeah, you might start caring about what's going on. And I did get to know my neighbors a little more intimately because of all of this. And I miss block parties, and I miss, like this 4th of July wasn't the same.
Yeah, it's been tough for me because I'm so like close to my family, and my brother and his wife had another child in April, and I haven't been able to hold them at all.
That's so sad.
Yeah, like I've seen them like on FaceTime or like super distant, but it's like, man, like can't my nephew, and I can't even hold him. And it's like this until something happens. I don't know when I'll ever be able to hold my nephew, which is sad because I named him. So I was like, I'm still happy. Yeah. So yeah. So I
My
just
baby too. And I was always joking with her that I was gonna hold her and steal her and stuff, but I still haven't held that baby either.
it's I know I don't know. Like sometimes I sit down and I think about it. Like, are we really living? Like, sometimes it doesn't seem like reality because we were so used to living how we were living. We were free as we thought we were, and now it's kind of restrictive, and you only could do so much.
I really think that's contributing to a lot of the protests and riots that you'll see around is people feel that, being inside and in quarantine isn't going to fix anything, and I'm done with it. And, the only way I can get my voice heard is to do this.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of you can't get. I think the elimination of sporting events and outside events and concerts. It's like I'm mad, I'm upset about this, and usually when I'm upset, I could go to the gym and work out. I could go play a sport. I could go do something to kind of take my mind away from it. Now it's like you could work out, but you don't know if it's really safe. You could do this or you could do that, but you're kind of unsure. But it's like I'm upset. I need to express myself, and I just looked online and somebody organized a protest about this issue, whatever the issue is, because it's not just somebody protesting. It's people are protesting about a lot of issues and rallying around a lot of issues. It's not just one.
Right. There have been entire protests about masks.
Right.
Yeah. I don't believe that every person that went to that protest cared intimately about having to wear a mask. I think some of them were just mad about the bigger political climate.
Yes. What is the best way to reach Alex?
To reach me? Sorry.
Yes.
Okay.
Your campaign.
Well, I have an email address. It's heimesforne39@gmail. People can go to my website if they want to see some of my values. And that website is heimesforlegislature.org. I typically give my cell phone out to anybody who asks for it. So all they have to do is ask, and then they can reach me at any point in time via text or phone. I have a Twitter and a Facebook and an Instagram, just like everybody else. So, and you can find all those handles on my website.
Before we get out of here, before we close, what are some things that you would like the viewers to know about you and who you are, and why members of your community should vote for you in November?
So I really got into this race out of a frustration for not feeling heard by my representative. So if there's one thing that I want people to take away from me running, is that I truly plan to listen to my constituents, to be available to them and as transparent and as possible as to why I feel one way or another on an issue and why I'm voting for something. I don't like these backdoor meetings and lobbyist discussions where you decide your vote based on companies and not the people that live within your jurisdiction. So if there's one thing that I can promise, is that I'll listen.
And that's big, and that's what I've been hearing when I've spoke to constituents. We just want somebody that's going to listen to us. We understand that you can't change the world, but we at least want to be listened to. I felt the same way before I even became a candidate. I was like, it's hard to really get in contact with those elected to represent me. It's always some gray tape somewhere and red tape, and it's always, if you do end up in a conversation with them or in a meeting with them, they kind of deflect and kind of make what you're asking not real, and say like, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. It's like, I'm living this. I know what I'm talking about. So I definitely think that's big, is listening. And I think that's the biggest thing we could do as candidates and as elected officials once we're elected, is to listen to the people that we're elected to represent.
So many incumbents create their own opponents by not listening to them.
Yep.
It's ironic to think that had my opponent just had that meeting with me and listened to me, that I could actually be an ally of hers had she done that.
Right. And it's sad. It's like, what did you get in office for? Was it for you or was it for the people?
And that's where a lot of that deep-seated doubt comes from, right? Like why are you here? And what is this really for? And who's your biggest donor? And then you start really digging into it and figuring it out. And yeah, that's what I want people listening to take away, is that, from talking to you, I know that you're in it for the same reason, that you're living in this district, you care about it, and you just want your voice to be heard.
Definitely. And again, we thank you all for tuning in tonight. I apologize for the connection issues. Not sure what was going on, but I definitely appreciate you coming on, Allison. Again, could you give your website and you could give your Facebook page, probably the simplest.
Oh, okay. Well, my website is heimesforlegislature.org, and my Facebook page is just Allison Heimes for Legislature.
Okay. And my Facebook page is Terrell McKinney LD11. Website is peopleforterrellmckinney.com. Again, we'll see you all next week. Thank you again, Allison, for coming on this week. I really, really appreciate it and wish you the best of luck going forward with your campaign.
Thank you. I'm probably going to donate to you again here in like 5 minutes. So.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yes. Have a great night.
All right. Have a good night.